I had been living alone in my grandfather's old house for about 3 months when things started getting weird. He passed away a few years ago, and since no one else in the family wanted to deal with the old farmhouse, I decided to move in. The house sat on a huge piece of land surrounded by woods, miles away from the nearest neighbor. I liked the solitude at first. It gave me time to think, to breathe. But after a while, the quiet stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling unnatural. One night, I was sitting on the porch, enjoying the cool air, when I saw something move at the tree line. At first, I thought it was just a deer, but as I squinted into the darkness, I realized it wasn't an animal at all. It was a person. They were standing just at the edge of the woods, partially hidden behind the trees. I called out, but they didn't move. They just stood there, watching me. I grabbed the rifle my grandfather had left behind and shouted again, but the figure stepped back into the trees and disappeared. I told myself it was just some lost hiker, but deep down, I knew that was unlikely. This land stretched for miles. No one would just wander out here by accident. A few days later, I started noticing small things inside the house being moved. A chair slightly pulled out from the table, a kitchen drawer left open when I knew I had closed it. My keys not where I had left them. I started thinking I was just being careless, misplacing things, until one night I woke up to the sound of something moving downstairs. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding, straining to listen. The house was old, it made noises, but this was different. This was deliberate. Someone was moving around down there. I grabbed the rifle and crept down the stairs, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The sound had stopped, but as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I noticed something that sent chills down my spine. The back door was slightly open. I knew I had locked it. The next morning, I found footprints in the dirt outside. They weren't mine. I called the sheriff, but there wasn't much he could do. There was no sign of forced entry, no real evidence of a crime. He told me to keep my doors locked and call if anything else happened. That night, I set up a few old hunting cameras around the house. If someone was sneaking around, I wanted to catch them. I also locked every door and window before going to bed. But sleep didn't come easy. Every little creak and groan of the house had me wide awake, gripping the rifle. Around 2 a.m., I heard something outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps moving along the porch. I sat up in bed, barely breathing. Then a soft knock at the front door. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. The knocking came again, harder this time. Whoever was out there wasn't just passing by. They wanted in. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold, a voice, low and raspy. "I know you're in there." I didn't answer. My grip on the rifle tightened as I slowly got out of bed. Then the doorknob started rattling. They were trying to get in. I raised the rifle and moved toward the front door, my hands shaking. The rattling stopped. Silence. Then, footsteps, moving away. I stood there, heart pounding, listening until I couldn't hear them anymore. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I checked the hunting cameras. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through the footage. There, in the grainy black and white images, was a figure standing on my porch, staring at the front door. They stood there for nearly an hour before finally walking away. But the worst part? They weren't alone. There were 2 of them. I called the sheriff again. This time, he took me more seriously. He said he'd send more patrols by my property, but he also suggested I consider moving. That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay. Whatever was going on, it wasn't random. These people weren't just passing through. They were watching me, waiting. I packed my things that same day and left. I haven't been back since. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had opened that door. But deep down, I think I already know. I've always enjoyed late-night drives. There's something calming about the empty roads and the soft hum of my car engine. It was a habit I picked up during my college years, driving, dismissing the odd feeling creeping up my spine. About 10 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of an all-night diner. I figured I'd grab a coffee and relax for a bit before heading home. I sat at the counter, sipping my drink, lost in thought. But then I saw it. Parked across the lot near the edge of the street was that same old sedan. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe it was someone else looking for a late-night snack. But as I glanced around the diner, I didn't see anyone new walk in. My stomach twisted with unease. Trying to shake off the feeling, I quickly paid for my coffee and walked out to my car. My fingers fumbled with my keys as I climbed in, glancing once more at the sedan. The engine roared to life, and as I pulled out of the lot, I kept an eye on my rearview mirror. A few blocks down the road, my heart sank. The sedan's headlights flicked on, and it pulled out, following me. My mind raced. Maybe I was overthinking it, but the way it trailed behind me at a steady distance made my skin crawl. I decided to test my paranoia. I made a few random turns, taking streets I didn't usually drive down. The car stayed right behind me. Now, I knew for sure something was wrong. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as adrenaline coursed through my veins. I wasn't about to lead this creep straight to my house. Instead, I took a sharp turn onto the highway, hoping to lose them. I pressed down on the gas, my heart pounding as the speedometer climbed. But the sedan matched my pace, keeping just far enough behind to let me know they were still there. I needed to think fast. Up ahead, I spotted an exit that led to a rural back road. Without hesitation, I veered off, my tires screeching against the asphalt. I knew these roads well, twisting, narrow paths through dense woods. If I could lose them here, I'd be safe. I killed my headlights for a few moments, hoping they wouldn't see where I turned. For a brief moment, I thought it worked. The road behind me was empty. I slowed down, my breath shaky, my knuckles white from gripping the wheels so tightly. But just as I was about to let out a relieved sigh, I saw them again. Their headlights reappeared in my rearview mirror, gaining on me fast. Panic set in. My mind screamed at me to keep moving, but my options were running out. Then, up ahead, I spotted an old dirt trail that led into the forest. Without thinking, I swerved onto it, my tires kicking up dust and gravel. The road was rough, making my car jolt with every bump. I glanced back. The sedan hesitated at the entrance of the trail, its headlights illuminating the trees like glowing eyes. And then, it stopped. The car just sat there, idling. I couldn't see inside, but I could feel whoever was in there watching me. My chest heaved as I struggled to steady my breathing. I didn't dare move, didn't dare turn my engine off. The seconds stretched into minutes, and still, they didn't move. Then, slowly, their headlights flickered off, plunging the road into darkness. My heart nearly stopped. It was worse than them chasing me, this silent, deliberate waiting. I didn't know what they were planning, but I wasn't about to find out. I threw my car into reverse, waiting to be noticed. When I was younger, my friends and I used to explore them whenever we had the chance. It started with old warehouses and forgotten houses, but eventually we stumbled upon something much darker. There was an abandoned church on the outskirts of town, tucked away at the end of a narrow dirt road. It had been empty for decades, though no one really knew why. There were rumors, of course, whispers of a fire, a missing pastor, a congregation that had vanished overnight, but nothing we could ever confirm. The town didn't talk about it, and no one seemed eager to explain why. One fall evening, a group of us decided to check it out. It was me, Luna, Gina, Johnny, Max, and Ally. We weren't looking for anything specific. Just a thrill, something to break the monotony of our small town. The church was surrounded by an 8-foot chain-link fence, but time had worn it down in places, making it easy enough to climb over. The main doors were boarded up, so we entered through a shattered stained glass window on the side. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt it. The air was thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. The first thing we noticed was the missing floor. The wooden planks had been ripped out long ago, leaving only dirt and a gaping hole in the center where concrete stairs led down into the basement. Naturally, that's where we went. The basement had 3 rooms. Only one had a door. The others were just open frames leading into darkness. We made our way into the largest room, a space littered with broken chairs and remnants of forgotten furniture. The air was damp, carrying the scent of mildew and decay. Johnny, always the loud one, laughed and joked, his voice echoing off the walls. Then, without warning, a door slammed shut. The sound was deafening, shattering the eerie silence that had settled over us. We froze, exchanging wide-eyed glances. At first I thought it was just the wind, but there was no breeze down here. The air was still, suffocating. Without hesitation, Luna, Gina, and Johnny bolted up the stairs, leaving the rest of us behind. Max, Ally, and I stayed, our curiosity outweighing our fear. Something about the sudden noise felt deliberate, like we were being watched. We crept toward the door that had slammed shut. Behind it was a small room, barely furnished. A single dresser stood against the far wall, its mirror cracked down the center. Red stains streaked the glass, smeared like fingerprints frozen in time. My stomach twisted when I realized the stains weren't completely dry. Then, I saw the photograph. It was an old black and white picture sitting on top of the dresser. A woman in a wedding dress, smiling. But something about her face made my skin crawl. Her eyes looked too dark, too deep, as if they could swallow you whole. The longer I stared, the more uneasy I felt. Then, another noise. A shuffling sound from the other room, the one we had just been in. Max and Allie didn't need any more convincing. We turned and ran, racing up the stairs and out of the building as fast as we could. As I climbed back over the fence, I made the mistake of looking back. A figure stood in the window, watching us. It was just a shadow, a silhouette against the dim light of the night, but I swear it was real. My breath hitched and I stumbled as I landed on the other side of the fence. None of us said a word as we walked away, too shaken to process what had just happened. That was the last time we went to that church.